your verdict. Give us the answer.
Sir, everyone wants to know about Amachan Mangaldas, the history of India's largest firm. Can you tell us where it started, how it came here?
Well, firstly, thank you for having me on this interview. I think it's a great privilege, and I always like talking about my firm because it's my passion. So the firm was founded really by my grandfather in somewhere in 1917 by him, Cyril Shroff, and his partner Mangaldas Mehta. They were two young lawyers, solicitors who really started off relatively early in their career with creating this Indian institution.
Was that in Bombay, sir?
It was in Bombay, and it sort of evolved a lot since then. So for many years it was just Amarchand Mangaldas without any of the additional sort of parts to the name, and went through several iterations. I would broadly classify it into 3 or 4 main phases. Maybe one landmark set of one period would be between the founding years and say the early 60s. Now during that time, not only during my sort of grandfather's time, but also my uncle and my late father were also part of the process. It was at one point of time also associated with Malvi Ranchod Das, when some point of time that sort of moved off on its own. But in the early, then rather the mid 60s, then it assumed another form by itself. My father started off on his own as well, and he acquired the goodwill of the firm. So he was a sole proprietor for many years. And that then another phase between maybe the mid 60s, and which went through 2 iterations where he acquired a very strong reputation as a corporate and sort of a financial services lawyer in what was then the corporate and financial services industry. That phase broadly continues till I'd say the in the sort of early 90s, and within that time there was a lot of expansion that took place as well, both geographically. We opened a number of offices in India. The most important and significant of that was the starting of our Delhi office in 1980, which was in some sense a sort of a tragic situation, but became an opportunity. There was a lawyer, Cyril Shroff, who was a very famous Supreme Court lawyer, no relation with the Shroff family, but he passed away, and since that practice had to run, my brother Shardul moved across to Delhi and took it over since the 1980s, and he's been there since then. He and Pallavi, they were also very young when they left. They were literally out of law school, but it was a great challenge and opportunity. So that's broadly some of the key pieces. My father passed away in 94. By that time, both Shardul and I were sort of in the business, but we were young. And post 94, when he passed away, I became managing partner here. Shardul, who was already heading that office, but perhaps got redesignated as a managing partner. And the current phase of what you see is the result of some of those changes. Coincidentally, it also largely sort of was in the same time when India was opening up as well. So perhaps the circumstances of a young leadership in the firm with Shardul and me, the market opening up and providing a lot of opportunities, and the third piece being the significant changes that were taking place in the legal education world, with a lot of employable graduates coming out from the law school, initially the National Law School and then some of the other schools as well. These 3 factors sort of coincided in what has now become the sort of Amachan story. We were the first to spot that opportunity. The traditional belief till the mid-90s was that the only way in which firms could grow were to hire what were called solicitors who are article clerks, and that itself was a very valuable qualification. The numbers were dwindling, and you couldn't really base a firm that corporate India required simply on that recruitment model. We were the first to change that. And since then, of course, the industry has followed that pattern, but it gave us quality and numbers in order to grow to the size where we are today, which we are nearly 500 lawyers today.
Alright.
So I hope this is a sort of a quick snapshot of the broad phases. There's a lot more detail and color to it, but that would take probably the whole of the interview.
Right. The two things in that I'd like you to spend some more time on. One is the opportunities presented by liberalization. What exactly were they? What were the regulatory changes that gave you the opportunities that you speak of?
Yes. So if one were to think of what was the most sort of exciting work, say till the till 1991-92, it would have been either traditional litigation, financing work, which was mainly the main sources of capital were banks and financial institutions. Particularly large transactions would have involved public financial institutions, and the sort of odd JV or foreign collaboration that would take place. It was highly regulated. So there was a lot of exciting work, but it was much more stereotyped. There was a sort of an incumbency in relation to those areas, and the economy had not picked up. Also, the manner in which lawyers were perceived at that time was more as sort of either problem fixers, or we sort of used to come in at a much later stage. We were not seen as partners on the ground floor of the business of our corporate clients. So what happened in the process starting from India's liberalization story was, firstly, there was a lot more opportunity that got thrown up. Not only foreign investment, but even corporate India started seeing itself very, very differently in terms of what they could achieve. Some of the major names that you see in industry today were not even there in the pre-liberalization period. If you look at the top 10 businesses in India today, except for 2 or 3, all of them are post-liberalization stories. So the opportunity in terms of new types of transactions, new types of capital raisings, the capital markets, say GDRs or international capital transactions, or the kind of capital market that you see today, didn't even exist in those days. So the world of commercial and corporate law exploded, and that required a firm or firms to embrace that opportunity with talented, hardworking, savvy lawyers. And that was the opportunity that we saw and we seized. And for that, the availability of good employable lawyers was where that sort of demand-supply gap got addressed. It also required a very modern approach to practice, including well-equipped offices, the use of technology, role of knowledge management, and just fast, efficient service. The reason being that clients who were coming in from abroad, they were used to a very different type of service in the West. And they were not willing to accept any compromises simply because they were entering a market like India, but which was at then a nascent stage. So we saw that opportunity and tried to fill that gap.
The second thing in that story is your evolution personally and professionally as a lawyer. Immediately after law school, just take us through what you went through professionally to become, the top corporate lawyer in India today.
Well, at least the way we were, our family was structured at that time. My sort of exposure to the law started before I formally qualified as a lawyer as well. So we might want to, in a manner of speaking, grew up in the firm as well. We used to come even as sort of young children, and even whilst I was before I was a sort of an undergrad in commerce, I used to come and spend time, just listen and absorb. Even during my sort of law years, training years, I used to come and do internships effectively. I qualified as and enrolled in 1982. My initial years were spent mainly in litigation. I think at least 6 or 7 years was mainly in litigation, and what was then available as a sort of corporate work. Few capital market transactions which were then under the controller of capital issues, but at least it gave an exposure to what the market could do. A reasonable amount of M&A work as well, but I would say I was a 60 to 70% more a litigation lawyer, and the balance was everything else. But as a young lawyer, you probably have less compartments in your mind, and you're more flexible. There were a lot of opportunities that were thrown. The firm was very small. The entire firm was about 25 lawyers in the between 80s and the 90s. So while the firm is small, it also gives you a lot of opportunity to do many things. You could be doing a court case in the morning, drafting a will in the afternoon, and doing an M&A transaction in the evening. Not conducive to specialization, but it gives you a very broad overview of many things that a lawyer needs to know. and that's really helpful later on in your career. So I'd say the 80 to 90s period was sort of in this phase. And as I come back to the liberalization phase, at that time I think I really got sucked into the effects of liberalization. So the initial I was involved in the first GDR issue that went out of India, Reliance, and many of the issues that took place at that time. I was involved in every fast-track power project that was there at that time. If you remember the 8 fast-track projects, which were then the hallmark of project finance, and that's when the project finance law really and practice evolved in India. So I was on one side or the other of all those deals and saw that happen. A lot of the initial M&A transactions, the first open offer that was made under the old listing agreement. So this variety of experience also added to that, and somehow the reputation stuck that I was a good corporate lawyer. And then you get into a virtuous cycle. The brand of the firm helped as well. The brand was created really by previous generations. I was a beneficiary of many of these. There was a lot of credit to what was going on in Delhi as well. Shardul was doing something fantastic there as well. He went as a young lawyer and was building a practice from scratch over there as well. So the firm was growing in reputation and influence. Since we embraced the new world, if I may say so, a little faster than some of the others, clients in today's time require fast, quick, responsive, modern service. And I think we rose to that challenge. At least that's what the market says. So I don't want to be immodest over there, let the market judge, but I think this is what happened.
Just glancing an eye at the future, several things have worked for you so far. You were also the pioneers in a lot of ways. However, as far as the future is concerned, particularly in terms of attracting and retaining talent, are there changes proposed within the firm, within the structure of the firm, particularly with respect to equity holdings?
Yeah, let me step back in terms of what our philosophy has been, and continuing again on this theory of we want to build a modern, enduring institution. People sometimes feel that there is an inconsistency between an institution and the founder family keeping a sort of a disproportionate role. I don't see any inconsistency at all, because whether it's our Indian cultural context or just the manner in which our society is structured, I have seen far more success in what I call promoter-led organizations than promoter-less organizations, which at some point of time they just drift and wither away. Somehow just collective form of business organization in India is not is not well established for completely flat or promoter-less organization. So some of the key building blocks and part of our firm's philosophical architecture are a promoter-led meritocracy. These are two very fundamental things, and which I've used over the years different expressions to define. One of which is I call the 2 wheels of a bicycle. So it's one bicycle with 2 wheels. Each wheel is important for the bicycle to move ahead. Each recognizes the need for the other, and recognize that if you have to move ahead a pace, we will need to work in synchronization and respect each other's sort of views. So this is fundamental. We have never had a problem and in terms of sharing economics, sharing influence and building profile of our lawyers. If you just look at the marketplace today and see the amount of well-entrenched, respected lawyers, you'll find a lot of them still in the firm, or even if they're not in the firm, they have had their training and grooming and have built their reputations over here. That could never have happened if the mindset of the promoter family of Shardul and me and some of the others would have been that we want to sort of keep everything to ourselves and not let people grow. On the contrary, why would we have started off firstly with campus recruitment? Why did we engage with the Boston Consulting Group in 1999-2000, and we were the first and probably still the only structured career path with that level of detail that is engaged. So many of the things that we have made in terms of changes to how our firm should be managed have been driven towards, we want to create an enduring meritocracy. We want the best talent in the market to feel this is the place to work. A, because they'll get the best opportunities and training, and secondly because there would always be a fairness in terms of how people are compensated and allowed to grow not only financially but also grow in terms of their own reputation and standing. Look at our capital markets department. We have someone like Yash Asher, who's recognized as an expert, and even before that, Rahul Gupta, who effectively sort of grew over here and whom I'm very fond of as somebody who has been a protege of the firm. So that's one example. In my corporate side, Ashwath Rao, and there are a few others who are outstanding professionals. Vishwanathan, who is a sort of a leading project finance sort of lawyer. This cannot happen if the promoter family believes that only we are going to run this show. We truly believe and that there is a two wheels of a bicycle, and it's really a partnership. That being said, to answer your question more specifically, how are we taking this forward? So I think we've done rather well in terms of coming so far, but we know that at every step of the way we have to continue to evolve. There is what held good in the year 2000 and didn't hold good in 2005 is not going to hold good in 2010 and probably not going to be relevant in 2020. We have to continuously evolve, and which we are. Where we are at this moment is, and as part of it is in the public domain, is we have re-engaged with the Boston Consulting Group, which is doing a very detailed study with us to help us chart our future. For us, remaining the dominant firm in the market, remaining the primary destination for exceptional talent, remain non-negotiable aspirations, and we will do what it takes to achieve that. I think this is work in progress, so I can't talk to you currently about the details of this, but you will see our carrying forward our process of institutionalizing and professionalizing as a continuous journey. It's not a destination, it's a journey which I think you will see a lot more evolving out of it. What you will not see is one wheel of a bicycle at any point of time, either one, either just the promoters or just, we're not going to disappear from the scene. At least so long as I'm active and have an influence in the firm, will continue to influence the strategy of this firm going forward, because I think it's good for the firm and it's good for the industry, because as you began the interview, everybody wants to know what Amarchand does. It is a market leader, people follow it. So we have a duty not only to our firm, but we have a duty to the industry, which we will not shy away from. So big changes will continue to happen as we evolve from one step to the other. I'm pretty sure at the end of it, talent will continue to believe that this is the best place to be. And once talent is there and service is there, clients come.
Another question about the future, sir, regarding practice areas. What practice areas do you consider the frontiers of Amarchand's practice area, the new frontiers being created by Amarchand in its ambition to become truly a full-service law firm?
So it's a bit of just different, probably at some part of it is different ways of doing the same thing. So take corporate M&A practice. It's as traditional as you want to believe it to be, and it's as modern as cutting edge as you want to believe it to be. Implementing an M&A transaction under evolving governance codes or evolving takeover regulations is absolutely cutting edge. Would you call it a new practice area? Probably not. It's been around for 50 years or maybe even more. So there's more modern, cutting edge, expert ways of doing what we've always done before, which is capital raising, banking and finance, structured financing, M&A, disputes, just the way in which you handle disputes in today's world with so much of cross-border activity. All that will continue, and the newness is just different ways and more expert ways of doing the same things. Other areas where, which sort of it tends to become a bit more fashionable to say that it's a new practice, it's question just of more focus, which includes the financial regulatory work that we do, environmental law, industry specialization in things like telecom, some subsets of the infrastructure space. I would hesitate to call them and elevate them, some of them, to full-fledged practice areas. They're probably new specialities and special focus areas, broadly falling within the same buckets. Coca-Cola's classic drink is still the best one. You might come up with a lot of new fancy versions, but it's still the classic that is the best. And we, in some sense, largely believe that our classic practice areas are still the best, but we want to get better and better at doing each of them.
Okay. So today, can you explain to our viewers how Amachan Mangaldas is structured? You have offices in Delhi, Mumbai, Bangalore, Hyderabad now. So
yeah, so we are in 5 cities. It's one partnership, one brand, and we are just, as I said, we are roughly about sort of 500 lawyers. We tend to maintain as much uniformity as possible in terms of, say, things like our conflicts, use of our brand, broadly the same sort of execution style, but being a multi-jurisdictional office, somewhere there are differences in styles that happen, which is not necessarily a bad thing. It is quite common as well. Organizationally, we have, in addition to the partnership, we have a management committee, which is sort of like a board of directors, if you were to take a corporate example. 2 managing partners, that's myself, who is based in Bombay, and Shardul, who is based in Delhi. As a matter of focus, he focuses more on the northern and eastern region, that's Delhi and Calcutta. I look after Bombay and the south, which includes Bangalore and the Hyderabad office. But in fact, we are both managing partners of the firm.
in terms of practice areas, is that
In terms of practice areas, that's a good question. In terms of practice areas, we have roughly sort of 9 main sectors, of which 5 are major, like corporate, banking and infrastructure, disputes, capital markets, things like that, which each of which have a sort of a senior layer of either heads or sort of senior professionals in them, and they largely run the practice on a day-to-day basis. They have a lot of empowerment and sort of decision-making authority. They pretty much run it on their own. And again, important to remember that neither Shardul or me are just managers. We are pretty much, very much in the practice as well. So in addition to the hat that we wear as managers, we are pretty much front and center of what we do. And we've all done different things. But these days I tend to, of course, focus much more on corporate M&A work, in broad variety of corporate work and private client work.
Just walk us through the growth path of a fresh recruit who has just graduated.
So when a fresh graduate joins, we sort of typically call him an associate or an A0, which is not necessarily a very flattering term, but it does pretty much reflects the 0 experience that they have at that point of time. They evolve through 3 phases. That's as an associate, then a senior associate, and then a principal associates. The initial phase of associate to senior associates is about 3.5 years. Senior associate to principal associates is a minimum of 2, and a principal associate to what would be a non-equity partner would be another minimum of 2 years as well. So it adds up to about 7.5 years. Special cases it can be faster. In other cases it could be longer, or it could be even never, from moving from one stage to another. So it's a sort of a quality bar at each step. There are appraisals done along the way. We have a formal HR department, which is a pretty large department by itself. We tend to, through the help of the partners, give associates feedback on how they're doing, and as you pass through these various hoops, you grow in the firm. It's based on a classic apprenticeship model, where it's 6 to 7, sometimes 8 years training when you're ready to be a sort of a partner of the firm. And as a salaried partner, you will again need to be there for a minimum of 2 years before you're considered for equity. And we have opened up the equity in the firm since quite some time actually. There's probably just a misconception that there's no clarity in relation to the route to equity in the firm. It is pretty much clear, though we are going to refine it even more.
All right. And regarding practice areas, shuffling between practice areas or sticking to one practice area for these 7-8 years, what's the approach of the firm to that?
So by and large, people, once they enter a practice area, they stay within that, not because there is a sort of a compulsion to do so, but it's just more efficient. And once you get used to a team, you generally continue with that team. There have been occasions in the past where associates have come and said, I don't like this practice area, can I move to something else? And on a case-by-case basis, we consider it. What we don't have is a formal rotation system. We've looked at the pros and cons of it over the years. There are some advantages and there are disadvantages as well. The disadvantage is that you don't settle down for a long time. Because of the sort of pace of growth and the need for making lawyers get them experience quickly, you get sucked into the front end of practice very fast, and then to change practice areas midstream is difficult. If you were to institutionalize a 1 or 2 year apprenticeship period where you are just trying your hand at different things, that might be easier. But generally speaking, once you are in a practice area, you stay there.
All right, sir. Formal methods of training within the organization just after someone has joined as an A0?
Yeah, this is again a big area on which we are working on, and again literally fresh from the oven. We have introduced our own CLE program, as continuous legal education within the firm, where you have to earn a certain amount of CLE points in order to be eligible both for some parts of your bonus as well as moving up the grades. So training is a very important thing in any professional service organization. We know that an amateur lawyer generally stands out in the marketplace because of the rigorous training that he gets over here. We've heard this many times, that an amateur lawyer in a meeting always stands out because there's something about the training and the atmosphere that over here which never leaves them. Which is not to say that other firms don't have it. I think there are some outstanding other firms in the market as well, but there is certainly something very special about the training in this firm. So it's both on-the-job training as well as formal training that we do. So we've organized it along 3 lines. We have team-level training, practice group-level training, and also firm-wide training. Additionally, we often call in people from outside as external speakers. The implementation of this CLE program this year and next is going to be a very interesting part. We're very excited about it.
All right. The amount of efforts that you need to put into training within a firm is a factor of the quality of entry-level lawyers. And you being one of the first firms to have engaged with legal education in such a serious way, how do you continue to deal with legal education? And could you also touch upon the history of this engagement with legal education? How did you first come in touch with law schools and start recruiting from there, and since then?
So, I mean, again, if I can go back to 93, 94, when our first engagement started with the National Law School. And at that time, there was no structured recruitment program as well. Hardly anybody had heard of the law school, but we had sort of come to know about it through informal sources. And it was a proactive effort made by the firm to reach out to the college and even bring up the notion of why don't we look at a recruitment and provide the employment opportunities. And I think at that time it was Professor Gopal Krishnan and Dr. Madhav Menon who were at the sort of helm of affairs. They liked the idea, and there were on-campus interviews that were conducted at that time. That went on for a few years. So actually Vishwanathan is one of the original recruits from that batch. In the next year, Umakant was also one of them. And over the years, we've had many of the students who came with the firm and stayed with the firm. But initially it was unstructured. Then I guess learning from the IIM experience, colleges also became, firstly there were more colleges emerging, and colleges became more savvy in terms of how to structure this. So recruitment committees started getting formed, internship programs started getting formalized as well, and then it became more an institutional engagement. We as a firm prefer an institutional engagement. We generally discourage students writing to us on an ad hoc basis. We prefer colleges either at the sort of leadership level or recruitment committee level approaching us, and we really enjoy our interaction with the colleges. It is a very big part of our strategy. Again, a law firm operates in 2 spaces, the talent space and the client space. So the talent space is very largely linked with our connections with campuses. Our strategy, as you know, has been largely organic. We have not merged with anyone, not for want of opportunity. We've stayed away from any international alliances, again, not for want of opportunity, but as a part of conscious strategy, because we believe that a firm built ground up with the brightest students is probably the most likely to endure and succeed.
Okay. Apart from recruitment, sir, is there, regarding the quality of, say, corporate law teaching in India, is there any engagement from the firm with universities and colleges across the country?
Yes, but to be fair, I think it is when colleges take the initiatives, we respond. We ought to have been a bit more responsive in terms of us driving it proactively. Very difficult when you have a very busy practice sort of going, but whenever colleges have called upon us, we've sent faculty, we provided whatever support that was needed. Just a few weeks back, I think maybe last weekend, there was Focus India at National Law School, where there were 4 of our partners there. So that sort of engagement we have provided. We will need to think about more forms in which Amarchand can engage with colleges in terms of more research papers or preparing, giving thought leadership to India.
All right. I'd like to move to the regulatory environment in which law firms in India are practicing today. And broadly speaking, the Legal Practitioners Bill has just been released by the Law Ministry. And broadly speaking, any changes to the regulatory environment? Do you think law firms need a regulator, for example?
This has been a big debate, whether you should regulate a firm or do you regulate an individual. I personally don't see anything wrong sort of one way or the other. What I probably think is required is a more comprehensive and a holistic view of the legal market and its whole. My problem with the regulatory environment in India for the legal profession has been that all changes have been ad hoc. Nobody has thought about what the legal industry in a holistic sense needs to be for what the needs of the country are. You have a country that is growing at 10-11% growth of GDP. Newspapers today suggest that we're going to grow faster than China in next year. With that sort of growth, who has sat back and taken a view that the legal industry needs a strategy that broadly corresponds with what the need of the market are? Ad hoc changes made here and there, I think, are going to have no impact at all. To give a few examples, I think we need a very deep thought in terms of what kind of business structures are available for firms to organize themselves properly. The partnership structure and its limitations is a classic example. How can you even have this 20 partner limit continuing today? It's completely anachronistic, and it's ridiculous that it even exists. Everybody has made sounds over the years, yeah, we need to change it, it needs to go to the LLP format, or the number should go, but has anything happened about it? Still not yet. Is there an access for private capital to come into the legal industry? And as you know, in UK with the Clementi reforms, that is on the verge of change already. So if I were law minister, I would sit back and think about and hear the industry in terms of what it needs, what kind of enabling regulations are required for the manner in which it can organize itself to face competition and meet the demands of the market, provide careers to young lawyers. It's still firms like us who provide careers to a very large part of the young students who come out. And in terms of how we could maintain that delicate balance between it being a professional services, even though your organization is on business lines. I have no confidence yet in terms of some of these ad hoc changes that are coming. It's quite pathetic, actually, the way in which this subject is being approached. There needs to be a holistic view. Any comment that is made of this nature always tends to be seen as an opposition to liberalization. I don't think it is that. It is more about, can we please get a strategy on the road, rather than simply having just one sort of theme of when do we open up the market to foreign law firms. That's an incidental part of what needs to be done. There needs to be a more fundamental review of what is this industry and what does it need.
Could you please list out the changes that you'd like to see in the market, particularly?
No, I already gave you some examples of what needs to be done. So the manner of business organization. Secondly, in terms of how the profession would be regulated, in which the question of firms versus individual regulation can also be thrown in. What is acceptable behavior and what is not? Advertising being one sort of key part of it. Websites, again, as part of the sort of advertising theme. What kind of alliances, if any, would be allowed? Because what's happening today, because ambiguity in this space, a lot of backdoor stuff is going on, which is actually quite unfortunate, but it goes on because of the manner, since history has not moved and time is at a standstill. So all of that should be clarified, and therefore the industry can function in a more transparent and fair way. There can't be a reverse discrimination against the domestic bar. What would I like to see as a final outcome? I'd like to see as a final outcome where the role of independent firms like ours is clear. We have a place, and at the end of the day, the Indian legal profession should be controlled by Indians, not by anyone else. That's where it should be.
All right. So I guess I don't need to ask you the question about liberalization anymore.
Yeah, again, I don't want to get into controversial. This is a very emotive subject for the industry, but I've given you my honest views, which is exactly the views I've expressed in the media many times before.
Sure. Just to touch upon the issue of advertising, currently, what methods are you using right now facing such a ban on advertising in the profession?
It tends to be largely word of mouth, and effectively when you speak at seminars or some interaction with the media is where people get to hear about you. But at the end of the day, the most powerful thing in our profession is word of mouth. It's actually a much bigger issue for young firms than it is for established firms. Everybody knows of established firms. A young lawyer coming out is at actually a disadvantage. Suppose he wants to start his own firm, how do people hear about him? And if there's rules on advertising, against advertising, there's no way he's going to be able to sell his wares, so to speak. And then it leads to aggressive behavior.
Do you think the argument of nobility of the profession is a relevant argument for this issue?
I think it continues to be a relevant argument, but we have to put it in the context of the 21st century, where you have to take cognizance of what has happened outside, where it continues to be a profession, but at the end of the day, there is a business element to it. There is an element of selling to clients that is involved, and if we are to face up to international competition, I think some of these debates are completely antiquated. We need to recognize that we need to be on a even playing field. You cannot say Indian lawyers and Indian firms will be regulated on the basis of concepts which are 200 years old, and on the other hand, you will expose you with both hands tied behind your back to entities that are functioning under different roles. One way or the other have the same concept. I'm okay with either, but it can't be that you have an unequal situation.
Okay. So during the height of the recession, 2008-2009, quite a bit of debate in the West, UK and United States about cost, methods of billing, etc. Is such a debate part of the Indian scenario right now?
Indian clients have been extremely cost conscious, more than any other market in the world, and that had nothing to do with the recession. They continue to be demanding value. Fee levels in India are definitely lower than in most parts of the world, though there are parts of the market where that is changing. The recession was not a big thing in India as well, because as you know, the Indian economy was not that affected except for some parts of the practice in some small, for a short duration. So alternative billing, fee caps, flat fees, risk sharing, all of that was always there. It continues to be there, and I don't see it ever going away, regardless of what part of the economic cycle we are on.
And have you seen a change in the way clients look at cost over the years? In terms
It's always, can I get more for less money? Okay. There's nothing is going to change that.
All right. And in your opinion, with your vast transaction law experience now, just walk us through how the role of a transaction lawyer has changed and your predictions on how it is going to change in the next 5 to 10 years.
Oh, it's changed a huge amount. And I said, I think in the earlier part of this interview, where we were first called in really as problem fixers or undertakers really on when things went really sour. Today we come in the beginning of, even as transactions are being conceptualized, on the ground floor really. So we're coming in as more as trusted advisors. We are in some sense also in corporate M&A transactions, doing the work of merchant bankers as well in terms of negotiations. So it's more a complex combination of a trusted advisor, a business strategist, and also someone who is a risk manager, because at the end of the day, working with a good lawyer who does his job in terms of analyzing risk and does the right documentation is a great insurance policy. We also play a role, I think, in terms of how regulatory relationships are handled. Regulation is so much a function of law, and we bring that special skill in being able to bridge really the gap of understanding between regulators and the regulated, and we provide that service there as well. So it's changed an enormous amount, and you can see that also in terms of how lawyers are progressing within business organizations. Some of them are reaching right at the top or just maybe one level below that. It's also what it's meant also is the kind of skills that you need to have to be effective. You can't just be a straight-jacketed lawyer who just can't think beyond the book. You need to have a very broad range of experience outside your main field. In fact, quite often it's what you know beyond the books that really distinguishes you in the mind of a client.
Let your verdict give us the answer.